Sometimes a crime boss freezes his enemies, and sometimes he causes wardrobe malfunctions. From a galaxy far, far away to a desert town looking up at the stars, these are the moments of cinematic nudity you might have missed. The second of the Hunger Games films, 2013's Catching Fire, sees Katniss and Peeta returning to their home district after winning the 74th annual Hunger Games. They don't have much time to rest on their laurels though, as they're soon forced to take part in the deadly competition for a second time. Many of the characters from the first film return, alongside a few newcomers, including Joanna Mason. Joanna's introduction happens in a memorable scene that takes place in an elevator that also contains Katniss, Peeta, and Haymitch. After showing disdain for the outfit she's been forced to wear, Joanna begins to strip, exposing the entire top half of her body. The scene is mostly shot in such a way that nothing too revealing is shown. However, there's a brief moment where part of her chest can be seen from the side. Wes Anderson has never been a conventional filmmaker, and 2023's Asteroid City demonstrates that perfectly. The plot tells two concurrent stories, one focusing on a play about a stargazing event in the 1950s, and the second a fictional documentary about the play. The two portions are presented in very different styles to help the audience differentiate them, with the documentary looking like a black and white TV show and the play portrayed in full color, to give it a more cinematic feel. Like all Wes Anderson films, Asteroid City features an all-star cast, including Scarlett Johansson. She's involved in a very brief moment of nakedness, making this one of a select few PG-13 films to feature nudity. Johansson's character Midge is an actor, and she asks a photojournalist played by Jason Schwartzman if he wants to see her practice for an upcoming nude scene. He readily agrees, so she drops the towel she's wrapped in and appears naked in a nearby mirror for a quick little moment.
I do a nude scene, you want to see it?
Huh? Did I say yes?
You didn't say anything.
1994's Pulp Fiction is a stylized, non-linear experience that follows multiple storylines, a filmmaking style that became writer-director Quentin Tarantino's signature. At the center of the narrative are hitmen Vincent Vega and Jules Winfield. They work for crime boss Marcellus Wallace, and other major characters include free spirit Mia Wallace and boxer Butch Coolidge. The tales are all interconnected in some way or another, and as you might expect from a Tarantino movie, there's a lot of violence, profanity, and sexual scenes. In general though, there's no nudity, and the camera is typically positioned in a way that nothing can be seen. With one exception, when Butch is getting cleaned up after escaping to a motel following his latest fight, he emerges from the shower, and there's a brief moment of full frontal nudity. The 2012 revisionist western Django Unchained, also directed by Quentin Tarantino, stars Jamie Foxx as the titular character, a former slave who earns his freedom and becomes a bounty hunter. Alongside Dr. King Schultz, they hatch a plan to rescue Django's wife, Broomhilda, from despicable plantation owner Calvin Candy. The film doesn't shy away from showing the true hardship faced by slaves during the era. There are frequent bouts of extreme violence, and two of these instances feature blink-and-you'll-miss-it nudity. And neither moment can fairly be considered sexual when you consider the violent context. The first features Broomhilda being dragged through the plantation after being tortured. The second consists of a shot of full frontal nudity as a gun is fired at a man's genitals. 2014's A Theory of Everything tells the life story of theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking and his relationship with his wife Jane. The story charts Hawking's impact on the world of physics alongside his health problems after being diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis while studying cosmology at the University of Cambridge. While the movie delves into Hawking's romantic relationships, it generally avoids showing anything explicit. Stephen and Jane have 3 children, and there are moments of intimacy between them, but no sex scenes. However, there is a small sequence when a copy of Penthouse is present on screen, and a nude model can be seen on one of the pages of the magazine. Many viewers probably miss this, as it passes by quickly and the camera doesn't linger on it.
Which magazine? Nature?
No. Penthouse.
Penthouse!
Yeah. Disney's The Rescuers follows two mice named Bianca and Bernard, who are part of a group known as the Rescue Aid Society. After discovering that the notorious villain Madame Medusa has abducted a young girl as part of her plot to retrieve a famous diamond, the pair set out to save her and get help from a variety of other animals along the way. It's very much aimed at children, which makes the fact that it contains nudity a little bizarre. For years, there were rumors that a topless woman could be spotted during a frantic action sequence. Those rumors were verified when the film was released on VHS, which allowed viewers to slow the action down. When the story gained traction in 1999, Disney promptly recalled the tapes. The company claimed that the nude woman had been added during the post-production process and not by one of their animators. An earlier VHS version of the film released in 1992 didn't contain the offending image because it was made from a different print. This brief moment was likely meant as a harmless gag when it was inserted back in the 70s. As a curator from the International Museum of Cartoon Art told the Tampa Bay Times in 2005, the animator probably couldn't have predicted that 20 years later, someone could be watching the film on a machine that would allow them to watch it frame by frame. The 1990 romantic comedy Pretty Woman stars Julia Roberts as sex worker Vivian Ward, who develops a romantic relationship with corporate raider Edward Lewis. The pair lead very different lives, as Edward is used to the finer things and genuinely doesn't have to worry about anything. After spending the night together, he hires her to act as his partner for a week. Throughout her career, Roberts has actively avoided going nude on screen, and that's a rule she was determined to stick to while making Pretty Woman. Even with the implied sex acts and charged dialogue, she never appears in anything less than her underwear. However, there's a bit of an exception in one intimate moment between Edward and Vivian, when Roberts wears a sheer see-through nightie. The 1997 sci-fi classic The Fifth Element sees Earth threatened with destruction by a fiery cosmic entity. A resurrected alien woman named Lilu holds the key to humanity's salvation. The plot kicks into gear after she teams up with New York cabbie Corbin Dallas, when she crashes through the roof of his taxi while fleeing from government agents. As you might expect from a somewhat campy sci-fi romp, The Fifth Element doesn't shy away from showing off some skin. There are several implied sex scenes, although generally nothing explicit is shown. However, there is one moment when Lilu's bare chest can be seen as she lies on a table, although she's quickly covered up. She's also topless in another shot as she's getting changed, but she's out of focus and it happens very quickly.
Want a cup of coffee? Yes. Yeah.
1995's Hackers is now fondly remembered by many moviegoers, despite debuting to a mixed reception and losing millions at the box office. The action follows two young hackers played by Johnny Lee Miller and Angelina Jolie. When they become involved in a conspiracy that threatens the release of an unstoppable computer virus, they face off against government agents and the criminal masterminds behind the whole plot. Considering that Hackers was aimed at young men who like computers and action films, it should come as no shock that it contains plenty of crude humor and sexual references. But it avoids anything too explicit for the most part, using clever camera angles to keep things relatively clean. The only real nudity comes in a blink-and-you'll-miss-it moment when Jolie's character unzips her jacket and her chest is fully exposed for a split second. Disney is best known for its family-friendly output, but there are some surprisingly adult films that were produced by the studio. One of them is the 1984 romantic comedy Splash. Tom Hanks stars as Alan Bauer, who falls in love with a mermaid named Madison, played by Daryl Hannah. After a string of romantic failures, Alan is determined to make things work with this mysterious and beautiful creature, but they naturally face plenty of obstacles. Splash is pretty much the definition of a fish-out-of-water tale. Gags often center on Madison's lack of clothing, though her chest is usually covered by some strategically placed long hair. That isn't always the case though, and on at least one occasion, her top half is partially exposed. There's also a quick moment when she jumps into the sea with her bare bottom on display. When the film began streaming on Disney+, CGI hair was added to cover her behind, although the original version was restored after parental controls were added.
I was shy.
She was shy.
Written and directed by John Hughes, the sci-fi comedy Weird Science is about two teenage boys named Gary and Wyatt who turn their ideal woman into a reality after designing her on a computer. When the duo hack into a government system for more power, an electrical surge brings this woman named Lisa to life. With seemingly unlimited superpowers, Lisa is able to help Gary and Wyatt stand up for themselves and discover a new respect for women.
Weird Science helped to establish Kelly LeBrock, who played Lisa, as a bit of a sex symbol, although she's not the one who appears in the nude. Kim Marlin, who was a Playboy playmate in May 1982, has a cameo as a woman playing a piano. She gets sucked through a fireplace and out of a chimney, but not before most of her clothes are ripped away, exposing her bare chest for a moment. Despite James Bond's encounters with the dozens of beautiful women who have graced his presence, there hasn't been a whole lot of actual nudity in the franchise. Sure, there are plenty of scantily clad moments and implied acts of intimacy, but nothing is ever really shown that would require more than a PG-13 rating. But there have been some moments that have gotten close, such as 1987's The Living Daylights. It was the first in the franchise to feature Timothy Dalton as Bond, as he attempts to prevent a KGB defector from being assassinated and works to stop an arms deal that could have potentially catastrophic ramifications. Like most Bond movies, the opening sequence includes silhouettes of naked women dancing. However, the only real nudity comes during a fight scene in which 007 disrobes a woman to distract a guard, allowing him to get the upper hand in the fight. While this woman is visibly topless for about 5 seconds, it's the fighting that's meant to hold viewers' attention. The Star Wars franchise has never been particularly steamy. True, Princess Leia may have worn that iconic gold bikini in Return of the Jedi, but that's about as explicit as these space operas have ever gotten, at least intentionally. As it turns out though, Return of the Jedi also contains an even more risque moment, although it happens so quickly that it's easy to miss. It happens when Jabba the Hutt is tormenting a Twi'lek dancer by the name of Oola. As the crime boss pulls a chained Oola towards him, the ensuing struggle leads to an unfortunate wardrobe malfunction, as her covering momentarily moves out of position and exposes part of her chest. Femi Taylor, who played Oola, has no regrets about the scene though. She once said about her costume, "It was very skimpy, but I think it worked because I think you needed it for that character and her background. It needed to reflect that in her costume, and I think the costume's wonderful."